What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. And today, people, I have a theory, and given my track record,
I am Nostradamus, the voice of God.
I'd say it's probably more fact than fiction, but then I'd get accused of being arrogant and full of myself. Can't have that now, can we? The drama surrounding Trials of Osiris is fascinating. Really, if you follow me on Twitter, it's something I find myself talking about a lot, probably to an obnoxious extent. But as they say, what you speak of at greatest length is what interests you the most. The first thing I want to address before we start is this sort of, shall we say, misunderstanding that I hope people are having. Trials of Osiris was free content. I've seen the
"But Joker, I shouldn't be barred from content that I paid for"
argument one too many times. So I figured we should start this discussion by clearing that up. When you're constantly losing in Trials of Osiris, you're not being gatekept from content that you paid for. My hope is that this misunderstanding is the reason that some segments of the Destiny community are so livid at the current state of Trials and their inability to progress. I can understand and even sympathize with being upset over thinking that you're being kept from content that you paid for. But here, that's not the case. You know, unlike when a certain subset of the PvE community gatekeeps endgame PvE content. Which brings us to an interesting point that people keep glossing over in all of this. Just like someone's not entitled to the time of PvE players to teach them encounters and run them through raids, people making the choice to enter Trials of Osiris are not entitled to anyone else's time. By hitting that start match button, you're entering a pool of tens of thousands of players with their own agenda. RNG decides everything from there. You could get match after match where you're facing off against PvP gods, or people who are playing PvP for the first time. It truly is an egalitarian and fair system. Given that I keep seeing people say, without any statistics to back it up, that casual and bad players are the bulk of the population, then statistically it should be a numerical impossibility for everyone in every game ever to be a PvP god or a YouTuber or a streamer just running around and curb stomping bad players. What's likely happening is a quasi-placebo effect. People know that this can happen, so suddenly, the statistically very few hundred cases of this actually happening, because statistically, there shouldn't be that many streamers, YouTubers, high-end pro players, and depending on your platform, there would be even less. Most YouTubers and streamers and high-end players play on PC, so if you're on PlayStation or you're on Xbox, the chances of you running into one of these high-end pro players is statistically low. Less so because streamers, YouTubers, high-end players, depending on your platform, tend to play together or are busy running carries for streams. So that condenses the population pool of good players, YouTubers, streamers even further. But as we've seen, this placebo effect gets blown out of proportion and becomes this ever-present boogeyman. But what's actually happening is nothing more than bad players who have been insulated and coddled by skill-based matchmaking in every other playlist are getting salty because they're getting their shit kicked in by nothing more than your run-of-the-mill average player, who likely lost a game or two later as well. It's a fascinating paranoia that weaker players use to soothe their bruised egos, but it's ultimately a cannibalistic mentality as they attack better players for the sole crime of dun 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 being better players and wanting loot in a loot-based game instead of attacking the root of the problem. It's not the players, it's Bungie's poorly designed Trials of Osiris loot and incentive systems. As trite as it may sound to say, this is literally a case of don't hate the player, hate the game. Recently, this Reddit thread, "There's nothing better to me than streamers whining," was brought to my attention, mainly because somebody made a post about me in it. The comments are saying that I would follow up my Trials rant with a rant about how hard Trials of Osiris is in 3 months because reasons. I guess they've never watched any of my content. If they had, they would know how stupid that sounds because I constantly advocate for Destiny to be more competitive, not less. For there to be rewards that are extremely hard to get, to create aspirational content, because the reality is, the things that you can obtain are the most beautiful. They're the ones that you want. They're the things that you keep playing for, keep grinding for. They're why you keep trying to get better. But I digress. With 17k upvotes at the time of writing this video, this post must not only have something fascinatingly brilliant to say, but empirical proof, evidence of their claims. It's not just going to be a circle jerk of Redditors and their misplaced hatred for Destiny streamers and YouTubers that should actually be leveled at the people, I don't know, actually making the fucking game, right? Oh dear Lord God, no why.
Y'all said that casual players shouldn't get rewarded. Y'all said that Trials of Osiris was no place for casual players. Y'all said that it's meant for the top players. Well, now we're leaving, and your matches are finally the sweat fest you wanted them to be. But it's just not fun anymore, is it? Now you've got to face people who are actually in your skill level, and it's not fun having to work so damn hard for a single kill, is it? Choke on your tears, because you won't find any damn sympathy from the rest of us. Sincerely, the cannon fodder.
Ow. 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 Nope, I can't kill enough brain cells to make that even marginally intelligent. It's just so stupid. No one ever said that casual players shouldn't get rewarded. We said earn them, just like gasp, shock, horror, everyone else. No freebies, no handout. You versus RNG matchmaking, just like everyone else. The single most egalitarian way this could have ever been conducted. We didn't say that Trials of Osiris was no place for casual players. We said, stop your insipid whining, this isn't a hug box, you won't be coddled, and you're not going to be handed your loot on a silver platter. Like in every other game mode in Destiny. Here, in Trials of Osiris, you actually have to get better. This post is just a gross misrepresentation of the arguments at hand. And then you have this idiotic part. Well, now we're leaving. Okay, bye Felicia. And that doesn't come from a lack of sympathy. I get not enjoying content, trust me. However, let's move forward and you'll understand why I can't bring myself to give one sugar-frosted fuck.
And your matches are finally the sweat fest you wanted them to be. But it's just not fun anymore, is it?
Actually, yeah, it is. I love a good challenge. More so when that challenge is in the Endgame PvP arena. You know, the arena that's supposed to be a sweatfest. Unlike, I don't know, every casual playlist in the fucking game, which is also a sweatfest if you have two opposable thumbs and a pulse. See, what OP fails to understand in their narrow limited capacity to actually argue a valid point that just doesn't come off as insipid entitled whining is that PvP has been cultivated in such a way that these sweatfest matches are all that players with opposable thumbs and mildly tepid brain activity above the medulla oblongata already play in virtually every fucking playlist. The threat of skill creep is non-existent, more so when your options are good players are forbidden from farming weapons because we must think of the weaker players. Or, like many people in this thread are suggesting, the introduction of skill-based matchmaking. If you introduce skill-based matchmaking, you've artificially introduced skill creep anyways. You've created a scenario where the good players are punished, for the mortal sin apparently, of not being bad, and the game is actively rewarding bad players for being bad, in a game mode specifically designed not to cater to the lowest common denominator. This, of course, is the joke in all of this. The lesser skilled players have whined and cried and bitched their way into a PvP that is nothing more than a safe space for them. They've not been forced to learn the game and get better. Now they're jumping feet first into a shark tank and, surprise fucking surprise to no one, they don't like it. So of course they go back to their old playbook and whine and cry about how Trials isn't fair. Except, it is. As I've said before, it's the most egalitarian playlist in all of Destiny. Everybody has the same chance of succeeding based on their talent and the talent of their team. Which is the entire point of Trials of Osiris. Need I remind anyone? However, this subsection of weaker players, because not all bad players, want to do the same thing to Trials of Osiris that they've basically done to every other aspect of Destiny. Make it easier, for them. And it will be just for them. But if that's the case, then the veiled threat of the cannon fodder leaving the playlist isn't a threat at all. They can't be considered cannon fodder because the average player won't interact with them because they'll be locked away in their own skill bracket. A skill-based matchmaking implementation, of course, affects the average player and the above-average player more than it does the pro player or the bad player. If we remove the current egalitarian system that places everybody on equal footing based on progression and matchmaking RNG in favor of a system that gives a handicap to weaker players and rewards them for being bad, and for basically just showing up, so they can play in their own little safe space away from, well, basically people with opposable thumbs. Not only have you invalidated the entire point of Trials of Osiris as an endgame competitive PvP arena, but you've invalidated the prestige and aspiration aspect of Trials of Osiris as well. Good and pro players might struggle and they'll bitch, but they'll get theirs. And by rewarding bad players for being bad and showing up, all you're doing is punishing average players for not being bad or not being a pro. Punishing a player for not being the best of the best when that's the point of the playlist, that makes sense. Punishing them for not being bad and rewarding bad players for being bad is just fucking stupid. This also leaves pro players and average players working way harder than bad players for the exact same rewards, simply because bad players are bad and they bitched and they cried and they moaned until they were handed their participation trophies. The alternative, of course, is to demand that people don't grind for God-rolled versions of some of the best weapons in the game, in a game about grinding for God-rolled weapons. But here's the thing. 1, that's not gonna fucking happen, and you are fucking delusional if you think so. 2, it's not the good player, or the streamer, or the YouTuber's fault that Bungie created a poor loot system for Trials of Osiris, lacking incentive. And on top of that, it's pretty hypocritical to ask people not to grind for loot when the entirety of your motivation for asking people not to grind for loot is so that you can grind for loot, and acting like it's some sort of moral outrage or moral failing that the average player or the skilled player are farming weapons in the most efficient way possible, because that's exactly what the game incentivized them to do, because Bungie fucked up, is a cataclysmic abortion of common sense and an unmitigated display of entitlement. And make no mistake, what these bad players are saying when they bitch and moan about people beating them is good players are not allowed to get what they want because they're good players. But bad players need to be catered to have things handed to them because they are not willing to put in the prerequisite time and effort to, as the saying goes, get good. This isn't even about giving bad players a chance. As stated before, Trials of Osiris is completely random and purely based on card wins and connection. It's about giving bad players an unearned advantage or a handicap simply because, well, like I just said, they can't be bothered to get good. And it's about penalizing better players because they're better. This would be the equivalent of players in the minor league getting pissy because major league players won't let them win games. What I find most fascinating about all of this is the subsect of people's unwillingness to call a spade and level the blame where it truly belongs, at the feet of Bungie. It's a cult-like mentality that refuses to let any one of them see who's truly at fault for the current state of the game, the people who make the game. So they attack streamers, they attack YouTubers, they attack good players, because as the Scrublord's prayer states, my controls weren't working, and if they were, you were playing dishonorably, and if you weren't, you were playing without skill, and if you were, it's not fun to play that way, and if it is, you only care about winning.
You just go easy on me. I'm new to the game.
Welcome to the real world! Welcome to the real world!
Okay, that's a cheat move. That's a cheat move.
Welcome to the real world! Time to learn! You gonna learn today!
Right there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a cheat move.
Round 2, fight.
You gonna learn today!
No, you're not. You're using a cheat move.
It's like the subsect of players care more about the idea of how somebody might be playing than the reality of the situation. They don't care that Bungie created a bad loot system for Trials of Osiris that incentivizes farming the early ranks for tokens. They just care that people are doing it. They don't care that Bungie hasn't incentivized going to the lighthouse. They only care that bad players are now being forced to play average players, and they can't get theirs. They only care that loot's not being handed to them on a silver platter. They only care that there's no advantage for them like there is in every other PvP playlist. I also wonder how much of this is a bit of hypocrisy. People bitching because they can't get their 3 wins before they get their 4 losses. Because that means they can't farm for the level 3 weapons, which have turned out to be some of the best weapons in the game. At the start of this video, I said I had a theory. And while all of this has contributed to an argument, there is one more point I want to make about a subsection of bad or casual or PvE only players. It's why I think they're attacking streamers and YouTubers and good players. Simply put, it's nothing more than astroturfing. There is this idiotic and entitled group within the Destiny community that believes Destiny should not have PvP at all. You know, that mode that single-handedly saved the franchise countless times, like in the year of no content between Taken King and Rise of Iron. This same group of brain trust believes that every nerf to their favorite weapons, even when Bungie outright states that these changes are PvE related, are still somehow PvP's fault. It's the same group of people that believe Destiny 2 Year 1 was dumbed down because of PvP, even though we have Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy explaining on camera that they dumbed the game down with examples so that it would be easier to understand for casual players.
That's great. Actually, I was hoping you could talk about a few of those small touches, because they're actually, if you go in the subclass menu, right, it's different now, which was like everyone takes that first, like, oh my god.
Yeah, like the first thing is that the subclass menu has, you know, a couple basic choices about your class ability, and then, you know, movement mode and grenade, and then you pick your super, but then there are 2 paths, right? We're trying to make it easier for people to have like an optimal build and just focus. These 4 elements go together. They do them, and you can play it in a certain way. And then there's these other distinct 4 elements that work together. Instead of like, Luke would like look at me, he never plays a game with me. I'm just like not good enough for him or whatever. But he like inspect my character all the time to just like make sure I'm playing and stuff. Or he can like rag me at the office. And he's like, what the hell are you doing with your like Warlock, man? You got this helmet on with that thing, and you got this thing all agility.
Where's your
like
Viking funeral?
Yeah, you got to set up all wrong. Like, what do you even know how to play this game? You know? And I'm like all ashamed and now, like, I can't really screw that up, right? Like, you're just like, oh, I'm pick the one on the top, and I can still do the wrong things, right? But like, there are like 2 optimal ways to play now, and I can like figure that out, and the space is easier for me to grok.
So yes, they literally dumbed down the game, not to balance it, but to make it easier to understand. I feel like it's the same group of people that throw an unmitigated shit fit anytime an exotic quest requires PvP. Even if it's the most mundane of tasks, like get 50 headshots with a hand cannon, or manage to get a 0.2 KDA for a handful of games. I suspect a fair portion of people bitching about Trials is this vocal minority that was pissed off that Trials was coming back to begin with. This entitled group of people are pissed off that Bungie would dare make content for PvP, a mode that they believe has no place in Destiny whatsoever, instead of using those resources to make a new raid. Combine this mentality with the insurmountable boogeyman of the YouTuber, the streamer, the good player, who's in all likelihood just the unremarkably average player winning games who may or may not be farming loot, not that anyone would ever actually know because Trials matches are RNG based on wins, leaving it equally likely, if not more likely, given the player population, that these bad players are just playing somebody who lost and reset their card, or just started one, but hey, fucking details. What's that saying about self-fulfilling prophecy? If you believe something is going to happen, you'll make damn well sure it does. At the end of the day, Destiny 1 did do Trials of Osiris right. There is ways that you can reward bad players for showing up, and not turn the lighthouse into the welfare house. Ways that doesn't squander the aspirational content or punish good players for being good players and reward bad players for being bad players. Destiny 1 had the Watcher's armor, then it had the Lighthouse armor, then it had normal weapons, then it had adept weapons. The issues troubling Trials of Osiris are not there because good players did the math and decided it was far more rewarding to farm the first 3 wins of a card. Anyone who thinks that is nothing more than a disingenuous idiot. The issue with Trials of Osiris is the lack of incentive for everyone involved, and that's because Bungie released the mode half-baked. These issues could be fixed relatively easily. Introduce bounties that give loot for doing complicated things over the weekend. Introduce a basic set of gear for people to earn while playing the mode like Destiny 1 did. Make things like going to the lighthouse more desirable. Things like token jackpots for opening up the chest, or a way to reroll your Trials loot through Saint 14. There are solutions, so instead of bitching at players for playing the game in the most optimal way possible, bitch at Bungie for designing a categorically shit loot system for Trials of Osiris. It'll make you look less like an entitled whiny bitch who's just not getting their way, and be far more productive, because unfortunately, as we all know, the only time Bungie fixes anything is when the Destiny community is practically rioting. So if we could go ahead and skip the cannibalism phase and go straight to the fuck Bungie phase this time, that'd be great. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to leave a like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more, and hit that bell notification because apparently subscribing means nothing. Feel free to donate to my Patreon, it really helps the channel out. But above all else, stay frosty.